Hi, everyone. Welcome. Let's wait a couple of minutes to see to give people a head start to join. And we're going to be starting shortly. Okay, 1 minute passed, so I think we can soft start. Thanks for everybody joining. I know everyone is very different countries geographically, so it might be quite late or quite early for some of you. So I appreciate you finding the time. The topic of today and the goal of today is essentially dive into investment committees, venture capital investment committees to be exact, and really understand the psychology of how they're assessing whether or not you're a good investment to make, and then do a couple of live audits to essentially walk you through how a VC might be thinking. Why is it important? Honestly, because I think it's very difficult to raise money unless you understand how VC is thinking. So what are they thinking when they're actually going to see your deck? What are they thinking when, what should be the next steps? Very often I work with founders who come to me and they're super excited. They say, we've seen this one investor, we need to prep materials. They're super excited. They say, we're building a great thing. And then they prepare stuff go to that investor and never hear back, because VCs are very often nice people. They're going to say they like you, but do they actually like you or not? And what does it take for them to like you? That's something that we're going to dive into today. There is a questions tab, so I'm not necessarily going to pause as I speak, but please feel free to send any questions there as we walk through. And then towards the end of it, I'm going to try to answer all of those questions. So a quick about me and why am I qualified to talk about this topic. So I've spent 11 years in the VC space, so over 600 successful rounds, many more unsuccessful ones, helped companies raise over $3 billion. I'm also ex-chief operations officer at Clevo. We got to Series B stage. We raised our seed and Series A. We found product market fit. We lost product market fit. And we've sold to a private equity earlier this year, now building something new and fundraising again. So constantly have that feedback around what VCs are looking for from all the different multiple places. By the way, this is our 5th webinar. We had a very successful one on rules of fundraising. So generally how to fundraise around in 2025, key mistakes, which sectors are raising, how to do investor outreach. We then did a second one around Series A fundraising specifically, and also the rules of financial modeling. Then we had a third one around the pitch decks, and we had a 4th one just recently around how to fundraise in autumn 2025. So if you need links towards those, happy to provide them. Let me know. Okay, agenda for today. So we're going to cover VC investment committee, how they make decisions, and then we're going to talk about what's good versus not so good in today's environment. I think that's probably going to take half of our time, and then the rest half of the time is going to be for live deck audit to be more fair. I didn't actually look at those decks, so the team selected them. I'm going to be looking at them in the same way as VCs do, as in seeing them for the first time and giving feedback live. I did, though, prepare a couple of other decks that have successfully raised from 4 to 200 million that are not online, and they're of the companies we work with. And I'll use them to highlight some of the good slides or good things, or why those presentations were successful. So let's dive in. And before we do, I want to quickly recap for those who maybe haven't been to previous webinars. What do we see in the fundraising environment today? A couple of things. One, it's the hottest fundraising window. Congrats. So up until Thanksgiving in US, mid-November, everyone is raising. It's the best time to fundraise. So if you're in that process, you're in a good time. Middle East is an exception because they follow a slightly different fundraising window. But that aside, again, it's a good time. Keep in mind that I think based on the deals that we are seeing, in order to fundraise successfully, you need around 35 to 40 investor meetings to close the round. Yes, it happens that sometimes we've seen a founder who done 100 and they didn't close. We've also seen many founders that did only 5 or 6 and managed to close, but on average, it's 35 to 40 meetings that you need to take. So if you currently have less, if you currently have 3 investors, you're speaking to 4, typically that means you have to beef up your pipeline already. And then it usually takes 2 to 4 months on average to close for a successful startup. Pre-seed/seed would normally be at around 6 to 8 weeks range. Series A would be slightly higher. But if you miss this, that just means you probably didn't have enough velocity in your process. And that typically means that your fundraising timeline is going to be stretched to 6-9 months. And for some of the companies we work with in Middle East, it actually took over 24 months. Even companies with great traction, just because things tend to move a little bit slower. So fundraising today, honestly, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, is brutal. So buckle up. It's super difficult. The landscape has changed a lot. So back in 2021, we worked with a couple of startups that managed to raise 20 million Series A of 50K ARR. That was incredible. Today, that wouldn't be possible. So everyone wants traction. Everyone wants great team. Everyone wants de-risked investments. Everyone wants AI. But also everyone is tired of AI. So the question is, if you're an AI startup, how do you position that story in the right way so that investors actually buy it? Funding activity is up. Everyone is talking about the fact that there are more money in the market, and that's true, but also the number of rounds is down, right? So less companies are actually getting financed. And then everyone, and I've spoken to probably 60 early stage investors, everyone tells that they're happy to be your first check. They are happy to invest in pre-seed, but also only after they see the ready product and only after they see the first revenue, which would never happen before. And today, really, investors are only buying first-class team, distribution mode, and then traction. So product and technology are important, but everyone knows they're replicable and can be copied quite easily. So really, your entire story and whether or not the VC ends up investing comes down to what have you done in terms of your team, in terms of your execution, and what kind of traction you have to show. So before we talk about the investment committee, I just want to make a small remark, and that is not everyone needs to be venture scale, right? So the next 20 minutes, we're going to talk about how to secure venture capital in a way. It is applicable. A lot of those lessons are applicable to other investors, but a point, kind of a small point to talk about, is that the best VC funds want you to be a $10 billion outcome, right? So for the likes of Sequoia or Anderson Horowitz to invest in you, you need to be worth, 10 billion in 5 or 7 years' time. And if your market is not large enough, or if your financial roadmap is not large enough, or if they believe that you don't have the vision to get there, then it's very unlikely they're going to be investing. Smaller VC funds are okay if you're a 1 billion outcome, but again, you need to be a 1 billion outcome, and it needs to be clear that you can get there. So Just keep that in mind. And if you already feel like your market is smaller, you don't think you can be the 1 billion company, then remember, again, the lessons are still valuable in terms of what we're going to talk about, but you would need to consider other funding sources. Very often that would be your angels, that can be some strategic partners. I can answer more questions on this if it's interesting. So what's an IC or investment committee? This is the world order of funding that also kind of coincides with the funding stages you typically get, right? So it starts with family and friends. If you're lucky to have a rich family or friends, then, you know, they provide your first money, and typically they can bet on the solo founder. Then come angels, can be professional angels, strategic ones, sometimes serial entrepreneurs, sometimes just successful businessmen, sometimes they're your colleagues, sometimes they're celebrities. We just worked with someone who got financing from an NBA player who liked the idea. They like traction, but they can invest without it, and they can still invest in a solo founder. Then as a next tier comes your tier 3+ investors, maybe family offices that invest early on. They're a little bit easier to secure. Some lead, a lot follow, a lot have herd mentality. So they would be super interested if someone else is interested, especially from the top ones, and they wouldn't necessarily be interested otherwise. Smaller funds don't need a $10 billion outcome, which is great, but business still needs to be venture scale. And here, a lot of companies we work with find success with kind of regional funds, specific vertical funds. They do need some level of validation the idea works. So typically that would be either product or commercial that's traction that's already there. And they would normally have some level of an investment committee that assesses whether or not you're a fit investment. And then you have your tier 1, 2 investors. That's your, again, Sequoia, Anderson Horowitz, Bear, Bessemer, Random. There are probably 100 of VCs in that list. They need $10 billion plus outcomes. They only invest in category defining companies. They want to see either amazing teams or crazy proof of adoption. So for these guys, there is always, I think, an formal investment committee process, and you need to hit those things. Like your deck and your story and everything needs to be built alongside their psychology, right? 10 billion outcomes, category defining products, crazy proof of adoption, or amazing team. So how does the decision making look in each of these different buckets? And I'm going to cover pre-seed, seed, and Series A, because today we have founders from each part of those stages. Here we go. So in pre-seed, sometimes they don't even have a formal investment committee. And it's also the fastest process. Very often can be led by angels or micro VC funds. You need to try to find an anchor who can help you with intros and believe in your idea. So typically your first angel that comes on board, or your first couple of angels or the first fund, they are normally, if they're good, they're going to make an effort to secure the rest of your round as well. And that means they're going to do intros, they're going to try to help you on your pitch deck, they're going to try to help you with advice, and so on and so forth. Very often, this resonates best with people who get the idea or live through the pain, especially if it's a specific vertical pain, like health stack is better understood by people who get the idea or are part of health stack. Restaurant tech, we've had a founder whose first round was almost entirely people who were managers in restaurants because they've seen the problem and they were very willing to jump on board and write some checks. So when you're in a pre-seed stage, there's probably not going to be a very formal investment committee process. What you're going to see is a couple of meetings, and then most likely the analysts on the fund side are going to do light due diligence. So if it's an angel would often take a couple of days to do some due diligence on the market, understand if he has conviction to invest. Funds would do light due diligence that sometimes probably on average around 2 weeks, based on what I'm seeing. There is no formal data room required. So you just need to have your deck and you need to have some level of financial forecast or budget. In all honesty, many funds won't even ask for a budget or financial forecast, but some do, so better be prepped on that. Then in seed stage, it can be a formal investment committee or informal investment committee. So it's a little bit more structured. It typically takes longer. You would have your initial meeting, and then from there, a couple of partner meetings. And typically for those partner meetings, it's good to know your champion. So your champion is typically an associate or a partner who's basically sponsoring your deal. And it's good to work with them beforehand to figure out what they need to be able to promote the deal to the rest of the fund. So in seed stage, you normally have one lead fund. You'd have a couple of extra funds or angels that contribute to the round. And at this stage, an expectation would be to proven or almost proven product market fit. So around 1 million in revenue or kind of getting there. So again, a couple of partner meetings, more structured DD. At this stage in due diligence, they would look into your product, they would look into your traction. Sometimes they would want to speak to your early customers, and it's a little bit of a more extensive data room. And then comes Series A, which is the most rigorous. It requires serious traction. So for SaaS technology, it would be 3 million plus in revenue. For direct to consumer, it can go up to 5 million in revenue. Good unit economics, strong growth, proven go-to-market. You'd have typically more people deciding here. So again, you need to know your champion. You need to work a lot on addressing early concerns. And it's a deep due diligence process. So you need to have your full data room ready. You need to be prepared that they're likely to hire an outside firm to do due diligence on your entire tech stack. And they're also probably going to do customer calls to see what the customers are saying. Do they actually like it? Sometimes they would also like to speak to your churn customer. So this process is pretty extensive. So this is how the typical investment committee or VC timeline looks like. So you would initially contact someone like an associate or a partner, right? And then you would go through the process of first screening. And that's when the partner or analyst evaluates the pitch. After this, it's typically yes or no or silence. And silence typically means no. And then you would go into partner meetings. So you'd meet one or more partners for a deep dive. They can ask about the team, the market, the product, the plan. Can be multiple meetings. So in some cases, it's just one partner meeting. If it's a pre-seed, it can be 3 partner meetings, even in pre-seed. And I've seen it sometimes being even 5 partner meetings. So that depends. They can be over a scope of a week. They can also take a couple of weeks as they're kind of diving in. Then from there, a yes or no, and typically it goes into internal review and due diligence. So that's when the fund is going to take a week or 2 to investigate the opportunity. So they're probably going to ask you more questions. They're going to ask for financials, for metrics, for references. They might ask you questions around the product, how you see the category, and they're going to assess if there are any red flags. And from there, they're going to prepare an investment memo. So investment memo is going to go into a investment committee presentation. So typically once per week in every VC fund, there is an investment committee when they meet and they discuss all of the deals. And then the sponsoring partner is going to present the deal to the firm's partner group. They're going to discuss it. They're going to talk about all the questions, market size, is the team good enough, competition projection, etc. And then from there, typically in a formal investment committee process, they would vote. They would vote to accept or decline. And then if they've declined, obviously they've just declined, they'd normally give you a little bit of feedback and say they're going to stay in touch. If they've accepted, then you're going to get a terminal form sheet. And if you accept the formal term sheets, then from there, you're going to go into final due diligence on things like legal, IP, negotiations, and then signing. And then at some time, you're going to hopefully see the money wired to your bank account. So what are the green flags and red flags in this process? So green flags, essentially everything to do with tangible interest and serious intent. And I've been into these processes a lot. So I think you can really say when people are interested versus when they're not. I think some of you already been through that and probably know some of those signs as well. So green flags would be clearly defined next steps and timeline always, right? So if at the end of the meeting, investor says, okay, it's kind of interesting, let me think about it, and that's it, they're probably not interested. If they say, okay, look, this looks really interesting, I'd like to discuss it with our partner, I try to come back to you in the next couple of days, that means they're probably interested. Fast response time is a green flag. Someone who said this is interesting and they're not coming back for 2 weeks. I know people get busy. I know that sometimes there's a lot on their plates, but I've seen thousands of deals. And at this time, I can tell you with very clear certainty, if they're not fast, the likelihood is they're not that interested, because that just means you weren't prioritized. Even if it's potentially interesting, you're kind of somewhere there and it almost never works out. The green flag is also if the decision maker engages early. So immediately after a analyst call or associate call, you get routed to partner for an assessment. That means they're interested. And if they're trying to sell you, that means they're interested as well. Now, this one is a little bit harder because I feel like VCs always try to tell a little bit around their firm. But if they really talk about, how much resources they have and other portfolio companies, if they say, let's meet for a coffee, if they say, we'd like for you to talk to one of our portfolio firms and get their view, then typically that's a sign that they're interested. Red flags have to do with everything that's ambiguity and stalling. So no concrete next steps, vague praise, stuff like, okay, we love what you're doing, let's keep in touch. They're not interested. If there is no follow-up meeting on the calendar, they're not interested. If they keep repeating some data requests without scheduling any partner meetings, they're probably not interested. If they're silent, they're probably not interested. Endless homework with no clear timeline. This is something that I think you need to be kind of prepared for and just take quite seriously, because I see loads of funds and lots of people who keep producing documents and they waste a month or 2 months on actually trying to consistently, okay, let's, extend our financial forecast. They're also asking for a product deck. Let's do a product deck. Now they're asking for a demo. Let's do a demo. Now they're asking for unit economics. Let's do that. Now they're asking for ROIs. Let's do that. Endless homework without a specific milestones typically means either they're not serious or they're fishing for info. I've never seen it in any other way. I see it very often in the Middle East as well, with investors that are not serious. They're not ready to take decisions. So they kind of go, oh, can I also have a business plan? Oh, can I also have this? Can I also have that? That probably means they're never going to invest. And unfortunately, I worked with a couple of founders that kept building those documents for 6 to 8 months to never see investment in the end, because they just use these documents as an excuse to find something. All of the best processes that I've ever seen were fast and were super effective. And that means in the past 10 years, I've never seen anybody who raised off a business plan. It's always your deck, your financial forecast, sometimes definitely a demo. You always need to have a demo, even in pre-seed stage. But really, there's not much else. There are your normal DD documents. There is sometimes a more extensive product deck. Sometimes they ask for your sales playbook, but it shouldn't be continuous and without a clear end. Never meeting a partner, again, kind of a red flag, or a senior person, and poor responsiveness. So what do they look at and how do they decide if this is worth their time? In pre-seed, primarily team, and then combined with traction. So the product typically needs to be ready. Early commercial signs often required. Demo is a must, even if you've just kind of built it up nothing. Like, you need to be able to show what you're doing, because today there are so many companies and so many AIs for everything that it becomes very, very hard for VCs to know what they're looking at. Demo gives them an opportunity to actually quickly understand what is that product and what is it about. And then the vision and execution mode. So again, I think I've mentioned that before. Technology is easily copyable today. So really what they're evaluating is, are you going to be having an unfair advantage when you're going to go to market? And do you have a large enough vision? I can't count the number of teams that I've had that had great product, really interesting traction, and didn't get VC investment because they didn't talk about being this, $1 billion, $10 billion company, and VCs thought that they lack ambition. And in pre-seed stage, that's super important because you don't have a lot of other signals. In seed, traction takes center stage. So it's a lot about seed, early signs of product market fit, commercial customers, growth inflection, retention. It's also about the team, and again, still about the vision. In Series A, becomes a lot about traction and execution. So the metrics, growth, retention, unit economics, your distribution mode, product defensibility, GTM playbook. Is it scalable? Is it good enough? And then again, team and kind of your vision. And obviously there is a couple of other bits that go into that, but broadly, these are the key ones. And I think in the second webinar that we've done, I've put down more specifics on that. So happy to share like what kind of numbers they look at. Are they looking for 500,000, 1 million, what kind of retention they're looking at, and so on and so forth. This is a typical IC scorecard. So IC scorecard Informal processes is essentially when they evaluate like a tick or they put a number towards each one of those things. So it's team, the quality of founders and team, your market size and opportunity, your product, value proposition and solution, traction, evidence of demand, your moat, competitive advantage, defensibility, risks, unit economics, business model, your process and execution, and your go-to-market strategy. Now, what does it technically mean? You probably look at this and you're like, okay, we know this. These are the parts of the pitch deck. It is why it's the part of the pitch deck, right? It's because investors, by reading your pitch deck, in the end, want to be able to kind of fill in that internal scorecard and evaluate how do you fare on each of those things. So all of those things need to be in your pitch deck, except for the risks. I never recommend to put risks in, even although it's part of the formal IC scorecard. But it also means that if part of those things are not in your pitch deck, which I see quite a lot, then you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot a little bit. Obviously, if the startup is interested enough, they're going to ask about it. Once they're heading into IC, they're going to ask what's your go-to-market strategy, etc. But your odds are better if you make sure you cover that. I think the most missed one out of the all that I see is people very often miss on the go-to-market strategy. Because they think it's marketing strategy. It's not. It's like how you attack the market. I think competitive advantage, a lot of people get wrong. So they kind of talk about things that, let's take this app, like, we have Airbnb and we're going to have be a solution like Airbnb, but, Airbnb has a pink screen and we're going to have a blue screen, or, they don't have an opportunity to select by additional filter, and we're going to add that. Like, they can add that, right? So it's not defensible. So when you think about your competitive advantage, you need to make sure, most importantly, you're thinking about defensibility, something that's going to protect your position from the others, something that's difficult to copy, versus just having like a tick/crosses on features. So as we need to go into the decks, I did want to get you some further reading. So Coalition Series D is an interesting one. You can just Google one-page summary of Coalition. It's an old one, but it shows you how like a typical VC document looks like. So you can just understand when you're building a deck, how they're going to evaluate you. You can also look into YouTube Sequoia Capital IM. So again, you can Google it. It's super old, but it's very interesting because it's super detailed. So it's going to give you insight in how deal memo looks like in later stages. You can also check like Ramp, OpenSea, Snapchat. It's an interesting reading because, again, you're looking at it from a VC perspective. And I think the most insightful bit is, they're always evaluating your potential revenue potential, especially in later stages, and what's going to be the valuation. And that means, are they going to be able to make their return? And one of the largest mistakes that I see in the decks today is a founder who's, saying we're going to be category defining. We're going to build this huge product that's infrastructure for the banks. And in 5 years, we're going to be at 10 million revenue. Now, it doesn't matter. Everything that you've said before, just not going to matter at this stage, because you've said in 5 years, you're going to be at 10 million revenue, which means your valuation is going to be 50 million and you invested, 5 million. And that just means the math doesn't work because they haven't made any return. So things like this are helpful to get into VC's mind. Some of the other things you can read, you can Google Bessemer public memos. Bessemer is a very famous VC investment. They kind of publish their memos in a way. They're not formal documents, but again, help to understand how VCs think. The link here is a selection of deal memos for angels, which is, again, very interesting because it's early stage, helps you to understand. And then there is an article on Medium that you can Google, Market One Capital Corner, investment processes across VC. And that one dives more specifically into investment committee, like how do they vote and how does the process look like? So it kind of has more on the specific mechanics. Quickly, before we go into the audit, around regional differences. So USA is very different from Europe and very different from the rest of the world. And those investment committees and VC processes are also very, very different. So USA has much more enthusiasm for bold ideas, even if they're unproven. They bet more on the team. they write larger checks for quality teams, but they also have higher expectations. So once you're live, they expect higher growth, large TAMs. Category vision is a must, right? You have to be very bullish around, we're going to win this market. And VCs also more commonly chase founders, and rounds can be faster. We've actually seen processes close in just a couple of weeks. I think it's also easier to build momentum and secure multiple term sheets, which is very helpful. Europe is kind of more conservative. So the mentality is prove it to me first, and the rest of the world is the same. So they're still betting on team, but they want very often to have some level of validation. So again, either product or early commercials. In the pre-seed, they want to see more in seed, and in Series A, they want you to typically be close to profitability. The expectations on growth are lower TAMs are tolerated, but path to profitability is important, and the process typically would be slightly longer. And then in rest of the world, there are generally fewer funding options. First capital checks are often either private investors or angels or government entities. Profitability typically important. Competition for deals is lower, which is good for anyone who's raising there, because the only good thing is there are not that many great companies. So it's easier to raise if you're good, if you have good traction. They do a lot more traditional DD. So in Middle East, especially in MENA, in Singapore and APAC, very often they do deeper market research. They do regulatory compliance checks. They will check, are you going to be able to go out of one of your smaller countries out to the larger region? And a lot of our successful clients in those regions, they actually seen processes of even 1 to 2 years. So that's a wrap for the theoretical part. I want to dive into the real life decks and do the audit. Before we go, some more happy resources. So generally, I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn. I try to post useful stuff there. So add me there. Ping me for webinars, because I think some of them are really good and would be very helpful. If you are building a financial model, don't buy a template. I think Google Creandum financial model. Creandum is a VC fund, and they've done a perfect financial model example. So check that one because it's super helpful. We have a lot of slides that got funding. So you can go to our portfolio, see slides for some design inspiration or content inspiration. And then I think most importantly, to understand if you would be invested by a venture capital investor, we have developed like a ChatGPT plugin. It's entirely free. It is in beta. We're still training it on our internal resources, but you can upload your deck. And we won't see it, I promise. Just ChatGPT who's going to see it. And what you're going to get is a fundraising readiness score. So for example, like I've uploaded a deck, here is 8, strong momentum, yada, yada. And then here is like 4. I do think our ChatGPT for now is a little bit more generous compared to VCs, but still it's helpful. And then it's also going to give you feedback on each of the slides. It's going to give you missing or weak areas. It's going to give you risk metrics from a VC perspective. And it's going to give you a committed debate. So it's basically going to mock members of the fund on whether or not they would potentially invest in you. So if you want to use this one, we'll share you the link after the webinar, and I'll ask my colleague to also drop it into chat. And yeah, it's just a fun exercise because, well, it's a fun exercise. You can check your deck and you can already see how investable it is. Again, keeping in mind, it's a tad more generous compared to the VCs, but we're going to train it and refine it as we go to become more mean, like a true mean investor. And finally, before we dive into the decks, it's just like how we help. So we just launched a service called Waves by WaveUp. Essentially, you prepay a certain number of hours from any part of the team. It can be help on the deck, financial model, investor strategy, can be building investor lists, can be reaching out to angels, VC, etc. It starts from 1K, depending on how many hours you need. There's no minimum month commitment. You can pause or cancel anytime. It's a very new thing. We're going to take 10 companies this quarter. We have 4 spots still free. So if it's something of an interest, you can give me a shot, apply, and then we'll select the companies we're interested to work with somewhere in the next couple of weeks. Okay. So live deck audit and some examples of decks that raised and why. Before I present the first deck, just give you an important stat based on our DocSend. And by the way, everybody should use DocSend to track engagement on their pitch decks because it's the best. I'm not sure if you know, and I don't get any money on this, but in DocSend, you could see how much time an investor spent on each slide of your deck. So you can know really fast whether or not investor is interested or is not interested, and where are they jumping off. And very often you see they're like jumping off on the first slide. So you definitely know your first slide is wrong because they're not reading further. So I highly recommend to never send your deck as a PDF. Always send it with DocSend. It's super, super helpful. So on a successful deck, people spend 2.5 minutes. On an unsuccessful deck, they kind of spend around 30 seconds. And what that means is, and I know a lot of people talk about it, but when you prepare your deck, you really need to think, can somebody be in love with this business in 2 minutes? Is it clear enough? Is it catchy enough? Is it compelling enough for people to look at it and be in love with this deck, or at least be hooked and wanted to understand more? And that's why decks that are very heavy don't necessarily work. That's why not all ChatGPT decks work really great. That's why you need to think about how you name your product. Like a lot of people have issues when they say, oh, this is a platform, and then they say it's a marketplace, it's an infrastructure play. And there are so many confusing things. Like show it to someone, give them only 2 minutes to go through the deck, and then ask them if they understood it. Ask them what did they understand, and that's a good test. And again, use DocSend to share it with their investor. So we got a few decks. I've asked my team to give me 2, and then I'll review those live. I haven't seen them yet. I'll try to go through them fast, similar to how investor would. I'd give you my thoughts on those decks, and then I'll also afterwards show you successful decks, and maybe they're worse than the ones I received. I don't know. And yeah, let's take it from there. So just gonna share deck number 1. Okay. And right now, all of my decks disappeared. So give me a bit of a time. Okay. In the meantime, as I'm trying to get the computer working, I'll answer a question out of our question tab. If it ever loads for me as well. Okay. Always interesting with technology. You see, you've seen everything. Okay. My team, I, for some reason, can't see the questions because it doesn't load for me. Can you please send them to me on Slack so I'd be able to answer them? Awesome. Okay, how do you show traction for an AI medical diagnostic tool that's not FDA approved yet? Medical tech is a very, very different beast altogether, in all honesty. So it's a very challenging one. I think reality is you don't. Traction looks a little bit different in the deep tech space or biotech space. So one thing that I could recommend is to first of all, just get the validation. That's probably an important one. And what I mean by validation is ideally show scientific proof of the fact that it's going to work, even if it's not FDA approved. Show some advisors, show some voices saying this is kind of, amazing. This is going to be great. Et cetera. And another thing that would be helpful is just really focus more on your experience and focus a little bit more on your past track record and then the markets that you would be able to attack with this one. So that would be my advice when it comes to medtech. Again, it's a very different beast. If you get in touch, I'm happy to share some examples of how some of the other medtech decks have done this. Guys, I will need to jump off for 1 minute because for some reason, no upload is working for me right now. So I'm kind of unable to share. I'll try to restart and be back with you in 1 second. But in the meantime, feel free to drop more questions. Just nothing works. Or actually, I think I'll figure it out. I'll just try to share it differently. In the meantime, I'm going to take a second question. What pre-seed deep tech biotech company show about traction? Okay, same kind of. So deep tech patents are helpful. LOIs are super helpful. I think it really comes down to the quality of your team. And ideally some early tests that show that it's kind of working, right? So for example, we've done a deep tech in financial markets, AI space. They've kind of built a demo that showed that they can beat over the market. Or we work with someone in the deep tech space. They came up with a new type of concrete. They've showed on a very small scale that concrete, is real and it's going to be better than anything else. So that's the only thing that I'd kind of say. Just, as much as you can, highlight your team, and then as much of extra validation point. Again, feedback from the industry, quotes from the important advisors help. Early LOIs help, and some small, at least some level of a validation that the product is going to work and it has merit, and not necessarily just in the science lab. Okay. Okay, I'm going to share the first deck. Hopefully you guys can see this one. Let's kick the timer. Localizing international payments. I like that the tagline is clear enough. I think that's pretty good. I can understand it quite easily, obviously. The problem we're solving: high transaction fee, slow transaction speed, access to multi-currency world. Okay, again, I like that it's clear and easy. I do think, as a VC, I understand this. As a consultant, I would say it's not like it doesn't affect me. It would be much more impactful if I could see the numbers behind it, right? So instead of slow transaction speed, just be a transaction, it's 2025 and a transaction still can take 5 days to arrive. And on $50, you would lose $5, and that's just unacceptable. And we want to change it. That's something people would be able to relate to more than, reading through the stuff. No. Solution: fast payments, okay, risk-proof system, affordable fees, multiple wallet solution, easy to use. Fair enough. Again, I think it's a pretty good description. I do like, and I think it always lends better when we have specific numbers. So when we have things like, it's X faster, it's X cheaper, it's just better. Current traction. What I really, really like is that the traction comes immediately after solution. And if you have a good traction, I definitely recommend you to do this because it's helpful. It instantly lets me know if I want to invest in this business or not. And it's your best thing, right? So you have to put your best foot forward. So don't talk about the market size and other. If you have great traction, the traction should go up. So I like it here. What I don't like it here is that this traction is completely unreadable in a way. So I like the revenue, but I don't understand if that revenue is yearly or if that revenue is to date. What is it? I also don't necessarily know if 2.1K users is good enough, if transactions is good enough or not. The chart is very difficult to read. I don't know what the black boxes mean here. whether that's cost, maybe that's profit. I don't know. I don't know if like 18,000 transactions, it's not really that much. So I think when putting traction, if you're a post-revenue company, remember that VCs want to see three things. One, proof of growth. They want to see growth months and months, or they want to see growth quarter on quarter, and that growth has to be impressive. And that also ties into highlighting your overall revenue purely because it's a milestone. The second one is investors want to see customer love. Customer love, if you don't have anything, is basically testimonials. If you do have something, then that's probably, I'd say, like retention or usage. So in this case, I would say one user on average makes 60 or 50 transactions, or one user comes back every month, and that kind of tells investor that the product you're building is sticky. And then the third one is unit economics. So that's your LTV CAC. Typically it's just like how much have you spent to acquire a user, and how much can you earn on the user, right? Like in the broadest terms of things. Okay, who we are, the story, remittance company that enables immigrants. I mean, that's fine. It kind of hands ICP persona here, so I don't mind it. Market potential seems pretty big. I think kind of fair enough. I don't really know how they've calculated SOM, so it would be helpful to understand what they see as their serviceable obtainable market. But other than that, kind of it's fine. Pre-seed funding, I would not advise you to say a percentage of equity ever that you're giving away, because it instantly implies valuation. I think it's too early in your teaser deck to talk about valuation, even though some people like it. It kind of just ruins the vibe. Either you're offering too much or too little. So I kind of wouldn't do it. And I think in pre-seed funding round, like it's good to know that it's sales and marketing, but I don't understand what is this whole thing buying me. So am I buying, like, are we going to get to certain revenue? Are we not going to get to certain revenue? So ideally, it's kind of a very clear milestones per round. Projected traction. Again, this is interesting, but in all honesty, in projected traction, I don't really care about things like transaction count or total users. I just want to know how fast you're going to be growing. And I can tell you from a VC perspective, this is not fast enough. So here, the projection traction would disqualify the company quite a lot. So it used to be that VCs wanted you to grow 3x first year, 3x second year, and then 2x third year, 2x fourth year, 2x fifth year. And now they want it to be 4x, 4x, 3x, 3x, 3x. So in this particular case, yes, they make a big jump in the first year, but then the business is not really growing from there. And that probably would be a massive point of concern. So I would not recommend to show this financial chart in this particular case. Whoever sent us the deck, just keep this in mind. Competitive landscape, I mean, okay, but really I need to know how you're going to win against this company. So this slide is a little bit meaningless. Best rates in the market, speed, multi-currency world, global access. I like that it has competitive advantages. I don't understand if that's defensible. Something that I've, please check to see that the slide that Olena is speaking to is showing. Okay, let me check with my team. Someone from my team, guys, can you see the deck that I'm presenting? Okay, it's showing. Thank you, guys. Not from my team, but really appreciate it. Okay, Nick, I hope that you're able to see it. So competitive advantages, right? Best rates in the market. If it has the best rates in the market, then the right way to do it would be to show the rates across this slide, right? So you'd show what Revolut has, what Wise have, and what we have, because otherwise it's unsubstantiated. Same with speed. If you want to show speed, like competitive advantage needs to be against someone. Multi-currency wallets, I don't necessarily, again, it's not really defensible in a way. So I'm quite sure that like Revolut can add, CAD or GBP, they have it. So global access seems too vague. So for me, this would be a red flag as a VC. Partners, I don't know any of these logos. I don't care whether they're here. If you're putting the partners down, you need to be specific around why these partners are here. Like every slide needs to sell, right? Every slide is your sales pitch. You don't really know what the slide is selling me. That you have partners, everybody has partners. So either you delete the slide or you explain why is that meaningful. So like Parkdale Center has access to 8,000 customers, and they're going to unlock it for us, whatever it is. Product roadmap, not really super interesting. Core team. I'm betting on the team. I'm sure whoever is sent the deck, you guys are great guys. So first of all, like 25 years of relevant experience. I don't know, like between 4 people, it's like 6 years. It basically means you're pretty old junior. But let's say even if it was 100 years, I always give the same example, and that's my granddad has been an electrician for 50. He's a very crap electrician. I have to be honest about it. So like years of experience don't really mean anything as such. I would really, really advise to, focus on your unique traction. Like people need to know, like Jeremiah, Chief Technology Officer, what has he done to deserve this title, right? Like he led projects XYZ. He's been part of the team, again, XYZ, led growth at a company X, raised this amount of money, scaled to X users, exited. Give me something to fall in love with this team. If you just give me your name and a photo, I'm never going to fall in love with the team, and I'm never going to remember you, probably. So the team slide would be a red flag for me. So overall, I kind of feel like the deck started really well. I really like the clarity of storytelling, and I like that the traction came first, but towards the end, it kind of just didn't really hit it for me. So I don't necessarily think that I would be investing. It doesn't seem like there is a big vision to get to a really large company. I'm not convinced on the competitive advantage. I'm not convinced on the team, and there is nothing on go-to-market strategy and how you plan to win the market and what's kind of, the big, large vision. And does the technology make sense? So yeah, probably for me, this would be either a no, or I'd want to meet the team and talk with them a little bit about their background and find out, if their background makes sense. I'm going to go into another deck before I show you some of the other best decks. So I'm going to stop sharing this one, and I'm going to start sharing. Just going to open it up, start sharing another one, and this one. So just FYI, whoever's on the call, I don't think you have asked to like sanitize any of the information. So I think it's going to come across as is. I hope that's fine. And if it's not, text me stop in my presentation screen, please. Okay, I just need a second to convert it into a PDF. And in the meantime, I'll answer another question. So if you have a hardware startup, how do you show traction? The product has had early validation, but is not market launched yet. Super hard. If you have a hardware startup, I'm very sorry. It's a terrible time to raise as a hardware startup. A lot of the companies that are doing hardware have kind of tried to position themselves instead as a deep tech hardware in a way that sometimes is a little bit helpful. But generally, how you show traction is practically the same as for a deep tech startup. So hopefully show some users who have tried the product or tested, really, really loved it. You show traction in terms of distribution for a hardware startup. It's going to be very, very important. So what you need to do is show that the distribution is not going to be a problem, right? So typically those are some LOI, signed agreements. Maybe you already spoken, secured some distributors somewhere. So that would be super helpful as well. And then, even if that's kind of like LOIs, that's potentially quite helpful. So just keep kind of those in mind, and the more traction, the better. Very often what we've seen is that some of our clients actually ended up launching on crowdfunding, not because they needed money as such, or they needed money, but they primarily launched it with the purpose of showing traction and showing that there was demand. So that's another really interesting way to do it. Just kind of launch it on crowdfunding and show there is a lot of demand and people are super excited the product. And that typically can be something helpful to kind of showcase traction. Okay, I'm trying to share and having a bit of a issue yet again. Okay, here we go. Able to share the PowerPoint, so hopefully this works. Okay, so we have here a pitch deck for real-time communication and management of human and material resource. Okay, I think the first one for me is, it sounds interesting, but I would really want to see more, like, I don't really know what that means, you know? So I'm instantly go, okay, maybe it's interesting or maybe I don't want to read. So public facilities face inefficient, slow communication. Resource management is manual. I think it's a clear problem, so that's kind of good. I think the problem is I don't know what public facilities mean. And I'm probably, as any kind of VC investor, like, is public facilities a hospital or is it a toilet? Public toilets, like, I don't know. And maybe it's all of them, but I feel like you need to be very specific for a lot of businesses that are where you don't know, where your ICP is not clear. Like, try to make sure your problem includes your ICP, which is ideal customer profile. Like, who are you solving the problem for? That would be super helpful. So the problem: multi-floor building infrastructure, lack of real-time communication, manual resource management, handling emergencies, effective resource tracking, lack of flexibility. So again, I don't understand for whom it is the problem. I can see it's a problem. I would rather see some stats or understand like how long it takes or why is it complex. Solution is an innovative real-time communication system. Okay. This is what I kind of said. I think as a VC, I'm going through this fast. I don't know what is a system. Like, is a system a platform? Is it a mobile app? Is it a product in my hands? I need to understand very specifically, like, what is it? So would be good to do that. And then, okay, unique solution not offered elsewhere. That's kind of a little bit vague. Instant coordination improves. I think we're mixing apple and oranges here. So the only two pieces about the solution that I care is what is it very specifically. And in some cases, you wouldn't be able to explain me what is it, no matter how hard you try. And if that's the case, then show me the demo. Like, instantly on your solution, put the video and you say, this is how it works and this is for whom it is. And I would be like, aha, okay, great. So what is it in very simple terms? And then what's the value proposition? And those two things are separately. And ideally for value proposition, instead of doing like improve operational efficiency, you'd say 2x higher operational efficiency, you know, delays reduced by 40 minutes. So at this stage, again, I'm kind of not sure what I'm reading. Market opportunity, okay, large and untapped. Again, there are no numbers. So to me, I'm like, I still don't understand which business is it for. Business model, okay, I mean, that's fine, kind of not particularly interested. Competition, again, I don't see the names, right? So I don't know what is that we are actually, you know, building as such. And I'll try to get snippets into something else. I honestly think that by this stage, VCs probably would jump off because they rarely take time to understand really what is it. So now I'm kind of getting to this new layer where actually it's a surveillance system with the focus on security, and our system is an integrated system. So, okay, competition, okay, helpful, crisis, emergency, use cases, all-in-one integration. I think be careful whenever you say all-in-one integration. Typically, you need to explain clearly why that is an issue. You need to show why the process today is broken, and then you need to say why others haven't built for that necessarily. Because very often, you know, when we come in, I've seen people come and saying, oh, it's going to be a social media plus a messaging app plus something else plus something else. Like, people don't necessarily like that. A lot of VCs want you to see that you're building a very targeted product with a clear use case. The team, I like that there is domain expertise here. I'm going to tell you early on that it's exceptionally difficult to raise if you're a solo founder. So in this particular case, from a VC, probably would be a no. I like that there is this future team expansion part, but typically this would then kind of only be relevant for angels. Okay, roadmap, prototype, pilot, expansion, global expand. That's fair. However, When I look as a VC at the roadmap, there are only two things I care about. What have you done so far? And then how will you take it to market? So in this case, it's super vague, right? There are no numbers. I don't know if the expansion is going to be in 10 years, in 30 years. I don't know when the prototype is going to be ready. I don't know what this slide means. Okay, I kind of feel like this is a value proposition slide. Okay, project was clearly identified problem, market research. Again, this would be a slide that would probably disqualify you because, and again, I really hope, no offense, whoever is on the call, trying to do my best, but also give it to you straight as I see it. I think there is always a way to pre-tee up traction. I'm going to show you a way right now. I hope we still have time. But like, it needs to be quotes from early users. It needs to be people love the idea. Like, we've spoken to 20 people, 19 of them said they love it. Like, this is not going to be enough for a lot of people to actually invest. Funding ask, you need to have a specific ask. So really, I think this one would need much more work. Again, go-to-market is missing, right? And this one is just missing the sales angle. Remember that, like, it's like a date, right? I mean, if you go on a date and imagine, you met someone you really like, and you speak with them, and you have 5 minutes to make them in love with you, and you sit there and you're like, well, I'm not really that interesting. Like, it's very early on. I haven't decided what I want to do in life, and I don't really know what I like. I mean, it's not there, right? Like, you would come and you're like, I'm super passionate about this one. I'm excited about this problem. I'm solving this one, and this is what I want to be. So you need to make people really, really excited. Like, forget about what needs to be on the deck. But one of the most common reason I see VC say no is because they spoke with the founder and they didn't feel the energy, and they didn't feel like they were, particularly excited. So make sure that kind of doesn't happen to you, because it would be a shame. Now I'm going to quickly show you a couple of pitch decks that have been successful and why. I realize we're 1 minute over, so guys, if you need to jump off, please jump off. I'll still take some time to answer questions, and you'll get a recording, so you can just watch the end if you've missed it. But gonna quickly, as it's opening up, I'm going to answer any other questions. So what's the most effective way to reach out to VCs and get responses in 2025? Cold email, LinkedIn, website form, especially if I don't have a warm intro existing network. So the previous webinar, I covered that quite extensively. And before I answer, please reach out to me, and I'm happy to share kind of a little bit more on that. I think cold email is working, in all honesty, but there are two types of cold emails that I see is working. So first, cold email is when you have amazing traction. It's very easy to sell the cold email and people will take a meeting. Second, cold email would normally actually have almost nothing, right? So it kind of be like, look, my name is Olena. I've just exited my previous venture earlier this year. I'm building something new again. I think it can be a great fit. Would you be open for a chat? Those work for me quite well as well. For me, website forms never worked. For a lot of people that I work with, website form never work. Again, if you have amazing traction, I think website forms can work, but they have never worked for me, unfortunately. And then I think what you need to do is you need to find a way to activate your warm network. So you can reach out to companies where VCs have already invested. You can reach out to industry advisors. You can reach out to angels who can then introduce you to investors. You have to think about how to activate that kind of warm network. Find people that can really, really get excited about this idea and help you as well. So loads of different ways. I think in the previous webinar, I gave like 50 different suggestions around how to potentially build your network. So ping me for that, and happy to share. Okay, diving into the decks and why they have worked. I'll cover a 200 million deck, and I've covered a 1 million deck. So they're all sanitized, but I'll take you quickly. This deck raised 1 million, and right, why is it good and why it resonated? One, it has a clear why now, right? So in the very beginning, we wanted to have a deck that clearly explained why today, like why the future is edge gaming in this particular case. And what's the problem, right? Like the world is unprepared. We can't function on the old infrastructure. And then an easy way to explain our solution, why the solution is defensible, because it has revolutionary tech. And here, right, you have instantly effect, like 68% faster, zero storage issues. And then from there, you go into value proposition, and then again, instantly traction, right? So in this case, the product wasn't live. So it's very familiar with, very similar to what you guys have asked, like, what do we do if we don't have yet traction? So in this case, right, like secured 150K from a gaming studio, in talks with major industry players, integrating platform and hours, hackathon winner, and then like a quote. And then they've released it to like a very small community on Twitter. And then they've asked them to review it, right? And then you put all of those kind of quotes in here. And again, that works, that shows validation. How are we going to lead? So the competition, our competitive moat, the team, and the logos, the large market. I really like sometimes this solution, which is you normally show, right, not just the addressable market, but also your economics. So like our average revenue per user is going to be this, and we only need this amount of user to get like 250 million in revenue. That works pretty well. Flywheel, because people like network effect. And then I don't think we've have the asking user funds in this one. This is the second one. So this raised, the product wasn't even ready. This deck raised 4 million in pre-seed funding without the ready product. It was only there in Figma. The reason for that was the team was pretty amazing. But here are some of the things that you can copy or steal if you're building a early pre-seed deck without attraction. So first of all, you start with the team, right? Like great experience, like co-led company, which pioneered the cloud channel, settled to YYY, co-founder, CEO of company X, like 5 billion GMV, like throw some numbers at it. Or like led eBay data scientist team, SVP of product at company X, etc. And then here's the problem, right? So first, this was an example, and that's relevant to this last deck that we reviewed. This is an example of the team, the solution where the solution wasn't easily understood. The ICP persona was specific. It was like a B2B sales buyer. And a lot of the VCs are kind of like, what is it? So we took the time to introduce the first slide, which is, meet James. James is an insurance broker, and she's selling on her own, but she spends up only 1 out of 3% of her day, right? Like actually selling, because 70% of time is spent on prospecting and sales, all done manually. And this market is massive. There are 2 million people like Jane, all prospecting manually. And this is what these people are saying. They hate it. So, we're on a mission to do something differently. Very easy solution, right? Again, we call it all the time the same thing. So it's like the first sales intelligence solution, or like automation platform. And this is what it does. And then from there, we say how it works. And again, every slide needs to sell, if you remember. So the idea of this slide is not just to show how it works and the tech stack, kind of not the tech stack, the tech behind it, but combine it with the value proposition, why it works, right? So vertical specific inputs, vertical specific AI models, vertical specific data enrichment, and then 60% less time spent on prospecting, 3x more qualified leads. This was all theoretical. The product wasn't even there, and investors didn't really push back on it. So just, and this is how we've done the validation with them. So they didn't have any validation because the product wasn't live, but they've done interviews, right? So what we've done here is we put it down, 200 broker interviews, 90% admit to having the pain, 60% prepared to pay for this more than for their current solution, 15 alpha customers recruited, and some quotes. And that was enough for them to get 4 million. The big vision, right? So today we're doing prospecting automation. Tomorrow we're going to be a vertical operating system, which people really liked. This is why the time is now. The opportunity is massive, again, times SOM, but you see, like I explained how we arrived at the logic, which makes it very defensible, opposite to the first deck when we kind of look at numbers, but we don't know where they're coming from. How we plan to lead the category and our moat, right? The moat is not necessarily the product moat. Like in this case, their moat was unique go-to-market motion and network strengths, and like proprietary AI. And the first solution targeting specific persona. And now like unique go-to-market motion, again, network flywheel, and what we are raising for. This is how a good ask and use a fun slide. Good luck. You have the round goal. We're going to hire 15 people. We're going to get to product that's fully ready and tested. We're going to get to traction, 100 first pilot customers and first revenue. And then this is what we've done so far, right? And then kind of launch. And here we come out of stealth, beta launch. And here, we sign people. This is another one. This one raised 7 million. That's a Series A deck. And we've done a really lot of work here to actually change their positioning, because they were a marketplace. They were calling themselves a marketplace. Everyone hates marketplaces. So we've changed them to AI-first procurement operating system, which people loved. Again, very simple problem, right? Like procurement healthcare is a big problem. Why solving to this is hard, or why no one has solved it to date. Our team is tailor-made for this. This is our solution. Here we kind of put this as a marketplace plus ERP. This is what it can do. And then instantly traction. We're very fast, efficient growth paths. Here are some of the milestones that worked for us. 4x growth, 1.5x burn multiple. We're a category leader, and again, stats per geography. Our vision is even larger. Again, the large vision, we're going to become the entire healthcare supply chain OS with autonomous resource planning. This is the TAM SAM, again, explained why and how. This is, right, the metrics around the competition and our moat and defensibility. So data advantage, first mover advantage, unmatched AI capabilities, end-to-end platform, specific stuff. And then our business model, if you see very light, this is Series A. People don't care about pricing. People don't care about how much does it cost. People just care, this is how you earn, and then your unit economics, 10x LTV CAC, 20 months payback on CAC. This is not good, by the way, which is why we didn't include other metrics. 10x is pretty good, but it's only on part of the product. You would kind of usually say ARPA, especially if it's increased. And then here's our go-to-market strategy. Again, not a marketing strategy, go-to-market strategy. This is how we select the markets, and this is how we win into them. This is our playbook on revenue. And again, looking to execute. And what are we going to do with this? What are our Series A big bets? Final quick one, and I'm gonna wrap up and answer any remaining questions. And while it's opening, let me see the questions. Okay, hi Olena, given Recon Max unique solution for hybrid financial reconciliation, what's Wave availability for a focus meeting to discuss how team can help us? Happy to meet. Just send me an email. So my email for everyone is olena@waveup.com. Send me an email. Always happy to chat. We're the first to approach residential construction with a vertically integrated, ops-heavy, and standardized and scalable model. How do we best show Moat to VC, especially as we shift from proven consulting revenue to in-house execution? This is a difficult one. Real estate markets are generally very difficult. In all of the deals that I've ever been part of, especially kind of shifting from consulting to in-house stuff, the first investors were never VCs. The first investors were typically real estate developers, real estate firms, specific real estate investors who gave you money to build the product and prove traction, and then you would go to VCs. But happy to discuss this a little bit more. Quickly taking you through this final deck. This deck raised 220 million, and this is a Series B deck. Sorry, I went through it too fast. So again, very easy, very little text, right? Very easy problem. Employee financial and security cost employers 620 billion annually. So employers suffer because their employees are financially insecure. 40% of Americans can't cover a 550 emergency, 75 live paycheck to paycheck. So it kind of instantly gives you an understanding of the problem. And then why it hasn't been sold today. Existing early pay solutions are unacceptable. This is why. We were tailor-made to solve this challenge. Okay, have a look at us. We have a great team. And here is only one line, but so effective. If you kind of look at the previous slide, 0 to 1 billion builder, or serial operator, finance leader, twice CMO. This is our vision. This is what we do, a very easy way, right? If you cannot say if it's a platform or a solution or a system, tell people about the use case. Aircard gives workers access to their wages before payday. It's very clear, right? If you see I'm reading through it, I'm okay, easy to understand. Full transparency, accurate earnings, on demand. Again, the growth track, if you're growing fast, like this is a trick. Don't put the title on top, put the chart on the right and, make sure it looks impressive. Your proof of love. We're loved by employers and employees, logos, review, stars. And then because it's Series B, it's kind of numbers. This was a market slide, which was sufficient, right? Like 75 billion market, less than 1% penetrated, and we're winning market share. This is how we make money. So this kind of breaks down unit economics, which is, look, this is how many users we have. This is currently active. This is our fee per transaction, average number of transactions per month, 10 months on average. And this is kind of, right, the revenue that we get. And then adoption, okay, fine, business model. How do we drive customers? GTM, our competition. We finish with a big vision, right? Like we're just getting started. This is what we're doing today. This is what we're going to do tomorrow. And then, Series B, big bet. So obviously I can go for forever. We have loads of those decks. I hope that some of those decks kind of inspire you guys to do your own one. I can see Adesh, you say you reached out on LinkedIn. Yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to share links to other webinars. Happy to do that. In terms of what has to go into about the GTM in teaser or longer decks. So on the go-to-market side, I think the most important one is just how you're going to attack the market. And for some people, it means talking more about geographies. For some people, it's going to mean, I think the most important one is like, how are you going to win your users, right? Are you going to use paid ads? Are you going to use your partnerships? Do you have any moat in distribution? Maybe signed LOIs with distributors. Maybe you have an active community on Discord that's going to promote this. So it's a combination of how are you going to acquire your users in a scalable way and what makes it so special. But the reason I say it's not necessarily a marketing strategy is because we don't need to know that you're going to invest like $10,000 in PR. That's not going to be your main customer acquisition channel. And sometimes if you are like in MENA and, you're a very small market, the more important bit is how are you going to acquire, for example, a lot of different customers outside of your small market. So then you would also talk about your geographical expansion and when you kind of plan to go there. Someone is asking me to reconfirm my email. I'm going to just drop it here. So it's olena@waveup.com. I'm also going to drop my name on LinkedIn. So that's Olena. You're going to get an email with a link to the ChatGPT thing that I mentioned where you can test your deck. Hopefully you find it insightful. Let me quickly see if there is anything that I've missed on the question side. I think I've addressed everything. Here we go. I'm very sorry, guys. I stole you for an extra 15 minutes. I hope this has been helpful. I wish you best of luck in your fundraising. It's never easy. Again, it's a little bit brutal, but if you survive it, I think you're going to be super, super happy. And hopefully all of the other materials we put together can be a good help in getting to that milestone. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day. Have a great rest of the week.